I got with me here Jeremiah Grossman, well-known specialist on web application security, and we're going to talk a little bit about how does the cloud actually influence web application security. So, web application security, really hot topic right now. Yesterday, Verizon breach report, 89% or so of all data records were compromised through SQL injection, so probably through some web application vulnerability.
Yeah.
So why is this thing so hard, Jeremiah?
Why is
web application security so hard? I mean, why can we not get a handle on that?
I guess two problems. One is 200 million websites are built before we knew we had to secure them. Mm-hmm. And 200 million more are going to be built by another 17 million programmers that have never had formal training in designing websites. So I think we're going to need two strategies for two different problems.
Okay, so it's a hard problem. You're saying it's an infrastructure thing, people are just not getting it?
I think it's a scale thing now. Mm-hmm. It's not as if we don't know how to build websites that are secure. Yeah, they're going to have bugs here and there, but by and large, they don't have to be riddled with the enormity of the security issues that are in there now. But right now, 200 million websites, if you just calculate in your head real quick, let's say the average site has between 8 and 12 vulns, let's say 10, right? That's, what is that, something like 2 billion vulns in circulation right now. We just don't know where they are yet. So it's going to take a significant amount of effort to actually go hunt those down and fix them one by one. So there's a scale issue on all the backlog stuff. And then given this is CSA, we're going to be deploying applications in the cloud like mad. And do we know what they do? How do we secure them? How do we know who built them? Okay. What happens when the developers vanish? And
so the 10 vulnerabilities per web application. I think there was an FAA audit last year. 70 apps were audited. I think they had something like 800 critical vulnerabilities. So critical being I can do bad things to the data or get all the data out, not just leaking, things like that. Then there were many more actually of medium, so it's probably a low figure there.
I remember reading that report. The scary thing to me on that one is the vulnerabilities, as they put in the report, gave access to the tower infrastructure.
Right.
So yeah, those are not sites that you want to have to be hacked.
So I think the other scary thing on that report was they didn't really say exactly what they were doing, but it sounded like they were using a commercially available scanning tool, and that's what found the vulnerabilities. It wasn't really that they put lots of pen testers on it that were digging deeper. It sounded like it was kind of the low-hanging fruit that they were analyzing there. So tools, frameworks, can that help us? Or is it all programmers' fault that?
Oh no, tools can help. Yes, finding vulns or preventing vulns. Frameworks will definitely help. Training developers will definitely help. I don't think we are lack of answers for how to solve this problem. It's a lack of incentives, lack of motivation. I get to talk at a whole lot of conferences, mostly security conferences, and I rarely see a developer in the audience. And you have to ask yourself why that is the case. And one really easy answer, and perhaps somebody in here might disagree, a developer learns security, they don't make any more money. Why bother coding secure? They're not going to get a raise, they're not going to get promoted, and they're also not going to get penalized. If they code a vuln in a site, if somebody finds it, they don't get fired, they don't get fined, they don't lose job prospects, so why bother? They get paid on shipping product. That's the deal. So we're missing incentives, proper alignment, not answers from a technology perspective.
Any developers in the audience right now? Raise hands.
All right.
Okay. We got a couple. That's good.
I'd be really interested to hear what you guys have to say. Why are you here? Like, why do you care about security? Seriously. In all fairness, really, is this just a personal interest, or your boss made you, or? So it's the organization got religion, and now they say we want to do security to some extent. So for those that can't hear, it's easier to get budgeting to send people to Blackhat and do and learn security and things like that. So yeah, I think. But again, it's just a scale issue. I don't know how many developers are at Blackhat, but there's 5,000 attendees. But if you just look at it at a worldwide scale, there's 17 million developers. I go to Java 1, none of them are interested in security, or very few by comparison.
Yeah. So on the infrastructure side, networking vulnerabilities or operating system vulnerabilities, we seem to be getting a handle on this type of stuff. The tools are working, patching tools are out. Not all vendors are coming out with their patches. Apple came today and patched something that you had found. When was that, month ago, something like that? But
yeah.
But there is a little bit of movement on the web application side. We don't see that because it's individuals that are developing it, and there's really nobody to go to.
Sure. Well. So speaking from my day job perspective, we find vulnerabilities in websites, vulnerabilities that don't have CVEs, that have to be developed, the customized patches have to be developed internally. And it's a difficult process to actually get those fixed, because it's not a systems engineer that goes down to a patch from Microsoft or Apple and patches it. There has to be a negotiation. We have to take a developer off creating a revenue generating feature that if we don't put out, we will lose money, versus taking this developer time and put it towards fixing a vulnerability which may or may not get exploited and may or may not lose money. So that's a difficult trade-off with measures that we're challenged to quantify. We don't know how to quantify risk and loss on an unexploited website vuln. Some corporations are risk averse, some are tolerant to risk, and who's to tell them otherwise? You know, in the case of Zynga, who's going to tell them that building a site with SQL injection and it wasn't a good idea when they make hundreds of millions of dollars in profit? Anybody going to really tell them that? you tell them? So, would you switch shoes? Like
So, in the cloud, I'm assuming most web applications that get deployed there are web applications, so that's really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So what's different there? I mean, when we look at infrastructure as a service, you Dan just said, you just spin up instances and you run applications on there. So is there a big difference? Does the cloud make it better or worse?
From a person that's very much a breaker, not a builder, when an application exists in the cloud or somebody's internal infrastructure, it doesn't really matter. Attack the website, SQL injection works across the cloud as not, so does cross-site scripting, CSRF, everything works just fine. For better or for worse, right? But the one thing Hoff mentioned earlier is that the cloud has a way of abstracting the network layers below, and so you can't readily deploy firewalls and intrusion detection systems and web application firewalls in much the same way as you could in other infrastructure, because it's all abstracted away. So when security is added to a cloud-based application, security has to actually be added to the app, because there's no other way to do it. You can't say, I did firewalls and SSL, good to go. No, because how did you do that?
Right. So that sounds to me like immediately it's worse, because I cannot depend on my firewall anymore. I cannot depend on my ADS anymore. I cannot depend on a web application firewall anymore, and maybe some other monitoring that I'm doing there when I'm in the cloud. I have to actually go back and secure the application,
right,
which is what you want. So that's good. I think we agree that that's a good thing. But
well, the incentives have lined up a little bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
So it sounds to me like it's going to be a bit harder in the cloud to deploy web applications, or at least...
Oh, no, they're going to be deployed regardless of security, at least in my experience. From my experience, the greatest feature of the cloud so far is they give the marketing department the ability to circumvent IT. They're going to stand up a new website with a credit card, and that's all there is going to be. That's just what's going to happen. Most organizations that I visit, they have no idea what websites they own. They don't have a single idea. They know a few of the top 10, but when they have 1,000, they have no idea what they own, what they do, what they're worth to them, what they're vulnerable to, nothing. They could all be compromised and they would have any idea. So we don't know our assets yet. And there's going to be...
Reminds me, I was a customer the other day, he said 31,000 minimum web applications, which was like a staggering number to me. I said, I don't know how you could ever...
Give or take.
Well, there might be a couple thousands forgotten still, yeah.
So it's a challenging space. I think we have a lot of the technical answers. We know how to do source code reviews. We know how to do developer training. We know how to do input validation, output filter. We know these things. Can we justify the expense to do so? So that's the thing. Can we justify the expense? Because security does not come free. It does have a cost. And are we willing to accept it? Are we willing to pay it?
Okay, that's going to be the subject. I brought a couple copies here of the white paper for web application security. They're also up on the CSA booth, 105 on the floor. Talk talks about what we need to address. So there's things like the software development process, which if you have a structured process, it shouldn't really be all that different. But there are a couple of aspects that we mentioned already. You don't really have control over the network in an infrastructure as a service setup. So where maybe you should worry about the communication between the servers there, encryption comes to mind, which could be easy point-to-point, or if it's some kind of message bus, could be a little bit more complicated, how you deploy it. Things that you wouldn't do in your internal network. So it forces you to rethink your software development lifecycle. Would you agree with that? Is that something that you see? Do people actually do this? It sounds like you think people just put web applications up there. It doesn't sound like this is software development lifecycle.
It'd probably be unfair to generalize. Some take it securely, they ask the right questions. Other ones just put in a credit card number and launch the new app. And then there's everybody in between. I don't think it's fair to generalize in industry so far. But yeah, I mean, there's companies that stand up, blogs on TypePad, and that's cool with them.
So outdated software comes into play as well, because they use these older tools to host their network, their sites?
Well, that's the thing. Like, who's managing the patch process there? If you find a new O-Day SQL injection in some standard blog software on a hosted environment, it's
screensaver. Okay. Security, So after 10 minutes of not doing anything.
Who does the patching, how patched. So here's the interesting thing that we find. Custom web application vulnerabilities, you have to custom attack them normally. So you find a vulnerability in one website, you have to custom attack that one particular. But on the hosted environments where everybody's running the same software, you get back into the whole monoculture debate. And now in web applications, you find one bug and down goes 10,000 blogs. GoDaddy had this problem, a whole lot of other blog infrastructures, that overnight you get 10,000 blogs or e-commerce sites that are delivering up malware to their users, and that happens real fast.
Okay, I think we're through to process and tools. So software development lifecycle should be adapted to a cloud deployment. Are you developing in-house and then QAing in-house and developing it and then deploying it in production? Are you doing everything in the cloud? What's happening to the data there? So at least there probably need to be some modifications, or at least a review of the software development lifecycle.
You have to know where you're going to eventually deploy and the threats going into it. If you understand the threats, where you're going to deploy with the threats into those environments, then you can adapt your SDL to mitigate those as best you can.
Okay.
Again, the thing that we learned is we don't have to have a perfect SDL. We don't have to make perfectly secure software. There is a good enough bar out there that we can reach for. It's just, where is the average? Like everybody has vulns. I mean, I'll raise my hand. I blogged about ours, right? We have vulns just like everybody else. How fast do you fix it? How fast can you be on top of it? That's really what it's going to come down to. Tools will help that.
Yeah, so what are the available tools? We have source code analysis maybe, so static analysis?
Depends how you break it down. So you definitely do have dynamic analysis, looking at an application in a runtime environment. You have static analysis, which will include binary analysis and line-by-line code analysis. Mm-hmm. So there's all these different methods to test websites, and they have very good sides, downsides. No one way is obviously the right way. They just very much measure different things.
But you're saying there are working tools right now that people can use,
yes,
and that show them something about it. But just
yes.
Black box testing, or if you have the source code, or like I said, there's even tools that look at binary code and give you some insight on that.
Well, just to go through, I guess, some of the pros, if you have binary analysis, if you're working with an application you got from somebody else and they won't show you the code, binary analysis is good. Run that through. If you have the code, you've written it in-house, it's not yet ready for production, doesn't yet run, you can get a deep look at the application. You have the regular static analysis, line-by-line stuff. If the app is already deployed, you want to get a hacker's eye view, what the bad guy will see when they're looking at the website. Dynamic analysis is for. So they're not supposed to be a replacement for each other. I know they're supposed to be complementary in the strict sense of the word, but they do measure very different things, and they're just tools.
Okay. That leaves us with more like network tools. Again, web application firewall, something that plenty of companies deploy. Actually, I've read a research paper from you guys a couple months ago that was talking about 40% deployment rate. It's not really that easy in a cloud environment to deploy web application firewalls, except, well, maybe there might be one of the other cloud provider that includes that or starting to include that. But in the typical scenarios, Amazon, Rackspace, they don't really have these tools right now.
I'm really not up to speed on their WAF deployments on those particular guys, but most of the time I'm I'm exposed to either Mod Security, it's a software-based application firewall that runs on Apache, obviously, or the hardware-based ones. The ones that come in a pizza box, you have real difficult times putting them in the cloud somewhere.
Putting them in the cloud, yeah. So you have to go back and look what are the software alternatives that are available. So how good is that stuff? How much time should I spend on that, or is that time better spent on fixing the application? Why am I fixing it in a firewall?
It's whose time and whose money. I don't know if you're going to have your developer tuning your web application firewall. That would probably be a poor use of their time, but an IT security person might. They'd probably be better suited for that. So if you're looking at it this way, these are just choices, they're options. It's no one right way. You find a vuln in your website, you work with the development group and go, how long is this going to take us to fix? 6 weeks, 9 months, never. Can we virtual patch in the next day or two? Would that be enough? Yeah, it might be for some organizations. Let's give that a shot. If we're going to fix it in a week and we can roll that virtual patch back up, great, that might be good for them. Sometimes it's a web application firewall just for a temporary virtual patch. Sometimes it's a long-term solution that just really depends on the organization. No one right way.
Okay, so that sounds like they can really be complementary in the deployment. Web application 5 could be a very quick solution, while it sounds like web application take a long time to solve. You're talking 6 weeks, 9 months.
Depends on the environment, depends on the bug. We've seen fast turnaround times in cross-site scripting and SQL injection bugs in the matter of 8 hours. From some of our customers, like really fast. Other ones, weeks, months on the average.
Okay. So some IDS vendors are also offering kind of web application firewall functionality. Is that do you see like a convergence there between what they do and what the web application firewalls do?
It's going to blur and get confusing. The IDS vendors will say they have WAF-like features to block SQL injection and cross-site scripting. True, they probably could in some occasions.
I mean, they look at the same stuff, basically.
How comprehensive is it? That'll be a question. I don't know. When we look at websites, it's very much the attacker's eye view. Is the IDS going to be capable of stopping us? We'll see.
So do you think it's fair to say that more mature cloud providers will add web application functionality to their services, that you can just check it off and get it?
Customers yell loud enough? Absolutely. They'll either do it themselves or go through a partner or something like that. Yeah.
Which is basically what Hoff was talking about earlier, if you guys were here. It's really the customers that have to say, we want this stuff. Without this, we are not going to deploy, and we'll probably have to pay for it in some way or another, right?
Security isn't free, so, I mean, bottom line.
Okay. Most of these topics are addressed in here, so I think can close down and see if there's any questions from the audience.
You guys have questions? Come on, there's got to be at least one question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi. What's your general opinion of the effectiveness of web application firewalls?
On which vuln style? Which vuln? It's kind of hard to generalize. So what's the effectiveness of web application firewalls? It will depend on the vulnerability in question. They have different success rates on different vulnerabilities. To kind of give you two examples, I guess. Session-based handling, if they'll encrypt the cookie on the fly back and forth, cookie-based twiddling to jump into other people's sessions gets pretty challenging when they're encrypting all the cookies on the fly. In the case of cross-site scripting and SQL injection, they can be really powerful, because they'll do whitelist, sometimes blacklist, sometimes both in combinations. But you throw encoding at it, and you can slide right by. It just really depends on the actual implementation. Are they perfect? Not by a long shot. Are they getting better? Yeah, we see it. We're trying. From White Hat's perspective, we don't get religious on the debate to WAF or to not WAF. Our customer said we need an option other than to just fixing the code, and we said, all right. So when we work on ways to bypass WAFs, we share our research back out with the WAF vendors, and hopefully they get better over time. So hopefully that answers your question.
So maybe just to address that with the session ending. So web application firewalls, they change content. They can actually improve your session handling, like an add-on. I've seen them offer additional authentication and things like that, CSIF protections, adding additional fields to the field. So it's not really only blocking things, it's also modifying content. And you're saying that can actually work pretty well?
They add security, and they can add security in both ends of the transaction, on security on the request coming in and also on the response going out. They can, yeah. You're going to get into it. You're going to get out of it what you put into it, and they're not a set and forget kind of thing. If anybody markets you otherwise, red sirens. So
it sounds it's like a division of labor things. If you have some resources on the IT department, they could help out a little bit with web security there to kind of offload the developers that are working on making productive applications.
Yeah, web security is very challenging. I think it's not a technology issue we're dealing with, it's a scale issue. Where do we get the people? How do we train the developers? If we're going to train developers, where are the trainers? Right? So,
I just want to make a generalized comment and close it out. This is what I firmly believe the problem with any type of application security, especially web application security, is it's got to be management driven. So that exact aspect is what focuses on enforcing the developers to develop security, using tools in that environment to test their software before it's released. Management enforces configuration management, not allowing websites that have not been tested to be put into a production environment. And that's what it's really all about. Management has got to take the lead on it. And that's where the money comes from. So,
I guess then the business question is that we always try to figure out a way to justify it is, why should the business care? Why should they spend? And I guess the best answer we got is either compliance, you have to, or that you might get hacked and we scare you. Is there any other way to do it?
So when we talk about education, shouldn't like the universities provide the educated developers that know security? Anybody here from the university or from the educational space, is that being taught, secure programming?
I'm even seeing a little bit of my current curriculum, but I think the issue is not your business management is not being taught, and that's where the real issue is. If business management, the actual managers are not taught the importance of application and web security, then they influence the money, and that's, you got to chase the money in web security, and that's the real problem. So it's great, yeah, we definitely want to teach developers in schools, but if management doesn't enforce the policies and practices, it's all for naught.
This is maybe where we bring up the compliance thing again. You don't do
Absolutely.
this, then you're not compliant, and if we get hacked, you go to jail.
Well, absolutely, and that's the one thing that I've seen it where it's turned around is, at least with FISMA, the whole accreditation concept. And if you hold management responsible, they sign for that application. That needs to be brought out back into business and industry.
But very much agreeing, having made a run to try and bring SB 800 to where it's not required, it's a beast. There needs to be something that's not quite as lightweight as the sand train. But golly, is there a way to use the compliance straight? Does management understand that? Compliant or not compliant? And have a ratcheted set of things management can be held out. It's not a one-size-fits-all, clearly.
Right.
Well, I wanted to point out that there's also sort of a philosophical problem, and that is that as a developer, you're incented to get your product out, rush to market. The company wants to make money, they want to get their widget out on the web, whatever. So you might take shortcuts, may or may not. It's really up to developer discretion. So you get incented to perform and to get it out there and to get it out there fast. So then you get a bonus because you're the star performer. You're not incented to get it out there as a star performer without incident. So then, if and when the application gets hacked or broken, then you spend X number of times fixing it, and then you're incented again for fixing code that you already pushed out in a wonky way. So I mean, from my perspective, it's like really corporations really have to go through a shift and say, you're going to get a bonus or you're going to be incented to push code out that's exceptional and without incident. Like how many, think of like OSHA, how long have we gone through, days without incident on site, something like that, but it's just, the system's completely broken.
Well, you got to look at it a little bit different. CEO is going to say, what's my cost if I get hacked? Heartland, TJ Maxx, Fidelity, and recently AT&T. There was no perceived cost in reduction in sales. There was no cost in terms of fixing the complete reset. look at. So he's not going to tell your developers, what is he going to say to produce securities? He's looking at, okay, it'll cost me $100 million, but I made a couple of billion.
And in the case of DJS, it was interesting, and look back at their financial statement here. They had record earnings, record stock growth, record store-to-store sales, record new stores opened that year. It's like, okay, the message is, hack the hell out of me, and my profits go up.
Maybe not that, but I agree, at the end of the day, it's a business decision.
Yeah.
That whether they made an informed business decision to proceed, or just worked out that way, I don't know. But is it, stepping outside the role of a security guy, is it the wrong decision? From a cost perspective, clearly not. You're very reasonable.
Yeah.
So,
But
the dog will learn the easiest behaviors with what the correction.
you know, to go back to the previous presenter, the WebSense guy, you know, in the whole kind of real-time sort of, you know, misinformation becoming information, it's like no major corporation, Fortune 500, wants their name on the top of one of these things that's brand everything. It simply says, you know, credit card company X is crap because they were hacked.
It's just tough to quantify in that way. We need X dollars for a security program, so we don't make the New York Times and suffer brand damage. It's a really difficult thing to quantify.
Yeah, it's a soft number.
Yeah.
You get that from the executives, and then they turn around and tell the developers, oh, by the way, this new application's got to be out tomorrow.
I'm with you.
That he's getting, oh, I don't want my name in the paper, but that application's got to be out tomorrow. Developers sitting there going, okay, what requirements are not going to go? Where does security fall in requirements? You know, it doesn't even come close to cutoff line. I mean, it's so far down in the cutoff that, you know, functionality rules. This is business.
There's a gentleman back there.
Where I agree with everything that's being said, one of the things we suffer from, and was mentioned before, is academia. When we get developers out of whatever university they came from, there's really none of them that teach security. I mean, I've gone to the universities as a part of industrial committees to recommend what they should teach, talk to them about secure computing, ask the students if they know what a SQL injection error is, what a buffer overflow, and they give you blank looks. So from the basis, they are not taught secure computing. And then it's left to the industry to teach them when they hire them. And most companies just don't have the budget to do it. So until we can start pushing it down to academia and start creating the basis, so when the developer comes into the industry and says, I'm going to develop correctly, then that problem really is going to be solved.
Right. So what's it going to take? Do we need a bigger breach or something like that? I mean,
Oh yeah, breaches help a lot.
breach help. I'm thinking about BP right now. They had a very big breach, so to speak, right? Are they doing anything? Are they drilling? Is drilling going to become more secure? It sounds like they are laying off the CEO, and then the blame is gone, and they are moving to other countries and ventures where drilling will still be allowed that way. So.
He's still on $1 billion.
Well, I think it's racing towards, like, you know, with a lot of the technology, it's getting closer and closer to our everyday lives. And until these application breaches, you know, sorry to say, cause loss of life, it's going to be really difficult to justify, you know, but it will get there eventually.
Well, that was what I was getting at. At this point, it is proven effective time and time again that, you know, federal regulation on this, while I don't advocate large federal regulation of everything, at least making it a criminal and civil offense for these CEOs to approve applications that lose customer data. I mean,
I think there's a law in Oregon, $170 per record, $170 fine and per record. So that's something that's coming.
You know, again, it goes back on the business bottom line. It's some of the finer tax to the CEO. He doesn't care. They still made their profit. They still made their margin. He still gets his bonus and walks off. But if they actually have a criminal, you know, where he might go to jail, he might do time for this, then that's the only way to making that.
Okay, we're running out of time. Last comment over there.
My last comment is, there's grants out there, for instance, out
part to prove whether it was infringement, I was acting as my responsibility, and I was compromised, that my bill was for it as a service that's compromised. And as long as that thing's out there, they don't have to actually say this was against it. They don't have to actually say no, it's CI mailers. I think that's something that I'm sure all of the cloud vendors are putting in their agreements when you sign up for service. And I wonder how the security community, for instance, Apple probably makes millions of dollars when they're hacked because it's a credit card company as well. So I don't know if that falls back on the PCI and the PCI standards, which is
Okay. Thanks for the discussion. Again, we got 10 copies of the paper here. There's many more up at the booth. And it's obviously online for download for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.